What is the chamber happy, not happy?
Well, what I would really say is that we believed that council developed a plan, or has developed a plan, since it still needs final voting next Thursday, that shares the sacrifice, that shares the burden among as many taxpayers as possible, with a small real estate tax increase of 4.5% to 5%, the relatively small UNO, use and occupancy tax increase of about 7%, and also a parking tax increase. We said from the beginning that we didn't want to see any funding request for the school district funded just on the backs of business. And we think that the plan that council has put together and preliminarily approved yesterday really does share that burden among all taxpayers, both residential, business, commercial, and we do support public education. We've always stood for supporting public education. We've advocated for that sales tax extension, the cigarette tax, various other measures to help fund our schools. We also need to see some help from Harrisburg, and we're hoping that as the conversation now turns to Harrisburg and its budget, that they can find some common ground up there and produce more funding for the school district of Philadelphia.
Does the chamber think that there needs to be a fair funding formula for the state of Pennsylvania? The Fair Funding Commission is supposed to come back next week and give its recommendations of a report. Should there be a fair funding formula that kind of weighs, that some districts have need and some districts do not? Does the chamber support that?
Well, so it's a funding formula. I don't know if it's a fair funding, but it's definitely a funding formula. We've been in those conversations from the beginning, both in a coalition of advocates as well as conversations with legislators as part of the legislative commission that's about to, as you reported, release its results and its recommendations sometime very soon. It'll be up to the governor and the legislature then to find common ground on a funding formula for the 21st century that makes sense for school districts like Philadelphia that clearly have certain needs, economic needs, socioeconomic needs, maybe a little different than other districts. We'd also like to see, as a business organization, accountability built into whatever funding formula is resolved and agreed to by the legislature and the governor. And by that I mean accountability for results, so that if more money is coming to the school district of Philadelphia and other school districts, that there also be measures put in place to track and ensure accountability for the results for our kids, so that it's not just a question just about money, but also very closely tracking results for children.
For our listeners who may not be a business person and hears of the UNO tax, they don't know what that means. What does that mean? What does that mean to a business? I'm Vincent Thompson, business owner. Do I pay it if I'm a general business? Is it some big guy that pays it? Does the corner bodega pay it? Who would pay that tax?
So the use and occupancy tax is paid by anybody that uses space, office space, here in the city. It generally is a situation as it plays out where the business, whoever you are, you rent space for a corner store, you rent 3,000 square feet for a very small law firm in a neighborhood, whatever you are, you will tend to pay the tax, you will remit the tax to the owner of the building, whoever owns the property. The owner of the building, the owner of the real estate, then will pay the tax to the city of Philadelphia. But make no mistake, it's the business owner, it's the business occupant who's paying the use and occupancy tax.
So is there an average cost that, as a Chamber of Commerce, is there an average cost that use and occupancy, like does the average business pay $30 a year or $50? Is there a number?
It's hard to say that because it depends on how much space you use. The rate is predicted based on both a rate that City Council sets, a tax rate for the use and occupancy tax. I think it went to $1.21 as a rate yesterday in committee. But then it's also, there's a formula in which they look at the amount of space you use over the course of a year. And that's how the tax bill, the use and occupancy tax bill, gets resolved. In the long run, it's not a tax that we want to see. It's a relatively small base. There's about 12,800 taxpayers that even pay this tax in the whole city.
How many businesses? Probably like a couple of 100,000?
It has to be a couple 100,000, because I can also tell you that the real estate tax has about 440,000 taxpayers, residential, commercial, retail, building owners that pay the real estate tax. So for a broad-based need like public education, we were recommending to council that it be a broad-based tax, like the real estate tax, that be the one that most of the burden fell on to provide more funding for public education this year. So that's why we thought that in the end, City Council has developed a shared sacrifice plan, and we commend them for what they've done. They've made some difficult choices this week.
Joe Grace joining us with the Chamber of Commerce. One last question, Joe. I'm a person that's going to park my car in a parking lot. The parking tax is going to go up. How much of an impact? You know, Philadelphians hate parking. They love free parking. They don't want to park in a lot. They say it's too much. How much will that tax mean for the average person? Does it mean that your parking rates are going to go up $1, 50 cents?
I don't know, because we don't per se represent the parking industry. I know that what council did yesterday was increase the parking tax by 12.5%, and the parking tax rate went from
It's like 20% to 22.
to 22.5%, and that increases 12.5%. So somewhere down the road, it's going to get passed on to the motorist, but we don't represent that industry, so I can't say for sure what that impact is going to be like.
Joe, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. You've always been a friend to City Council Live, and thank you for allowing us to use this technology to pigeonhole you into a corner where you didn't know I was coming.
Thank you, WURD, and all your listeners.